Are you 65 or older, lying awake, terrified the government will take your house if you ever need Medicaid? You don't have to be. Let me prove it. I read the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Estate Recovery Rules and the Texas Health and Human Services Program page. The rule is real. Here are the 4 things that decide it. What recovery actually is, why your home is exempt, who is protected, and how you plan. Let's go. My name is Eric. I'm going to walk you through each of the 4 rules in order, show you the federal law or state program behind each one, and end with a 1-page action plan so you can protect your home yourself this week. Before we touch the 4 rules, I need to fix the single biggest misunderstanding in retirement, because almost everybody has it backwards. Medicaid does not send someone to seize your house while you are alive. That is not how the program works. Your home is generally treated as an exempt asset when they decide whether you qualify for long-term care Medicaid. If you live in it, or your spouse lives in it, or a child under 21 or a blind or disabled child of any age lives in it, the house does not count against you at all. There is a home equity limit that matters when you are single and living in a nursing home, and I'll give you that exact number in Rule 2. But the point I need you to hear right now is this. The thing people are actually afraid of is not seizure while living. It is something called estate recovery, and it happens after you have died. Exempt while you are alive is not the same as safe from recovery after death. 2 completely different rules. Once you understand that split, everything else stops being scary and starts being manageable. So let's take the 4 rules one at a time. Rule 1 is estate recovery itself, and this is the federal anchor everything else hangs from. Here is the law. When Medicaid pays for your long-term care, nursing facility care, home and community-based services, and the related hospital and prescription costs that go with them, your state is federally required to try to get that money back from your estate after you die, if you received that care at age 55 or older. This is not optional for the state. It became mandatory for every state with a federal law passed in 1993, the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. Each state runs its own version through what is called a Medicaid Estate Recovery Program. The Medicaid agency itself puts it plainly, that for individuals age 55 or older, states are required to seek recovery of payments from the estate for nursing facility services, home and community-based services, and related hospital and prescription drug services. Now here's the catch, and it is where state variation becomes real. The federal government only requires recovery for that long-term care category. But states are allowed to go further and recover the cost of other Medicaid services too, and many do. So the honest answer to how far your state reaches is that you have to check your state. Some states recover only long-term care. Others recover much more. Texas, for example, publishes that its program affects only long-term services and supports received after age 55. And only if you first applied for those services after March 1, 2005. That is, on the Texas Health and Human Services Estate Recovery page. The lesson from Rule 1 is simple. Recovery is real. It is federally mandated. It applies from age 55, and it happens after death, not before. Rule 2 is the one that lets most people breathe again. While you are alive, your home is usually exempt. It is not counted against you for eligibility, up to a home equity limit, as long as you live there or intend to return, or your spouse or a dependent lives there. So what is that limit? For 2026, the federal minimum home equity limit is $752,000, and states may set it as high as $1,130,000. Most states use the lower figure of $752,000. A dozen states and the District of Columbia use the higher one, and California uses no limit at all. Home equity, to be clear, means the market value of the house minus any mortgage or debt against it. So if your house is worth $800,000 and you still owe $100,000 on it, your equity is $700,000, which is under the line in most states, and your home stays exempt. And here is the part that surprises people. If your husband or wife is still living in that home, the equity limit does not apply at all. The house is exempt regardless of value while your spouse lives there. That is on the Medicaid eligibility guidance for 2026. Look at your own home's value against that line right now. For the overwhelming majority of retired homeowners in this country, the house is nowhere near the limit, and it is protected while you live. Rule 3 is the heart of the matter, because these are the exemptions that actually block recovery after you are gone. The Medicaid agency's own rule states that a state may not recover from the estate of a deceased enrollee who is survived by a spouse, by a child under age 21, or by a blind or disabled child of any age. That is federal, it is in the rule, and it is absolute. While your spouse is alive, recovery cannot proceed. While you have a minor child or disabled child of any age, recovery is barred. Beyond those three, there are more protections you have to ask about. There is a sibling exemption for a brother or sister who has an equity interest in the home and lived there for at least a year before you entered care. There is the undue hardship waiver, which every state is federally required to offer, though each state writes its own definition and its own application process. And there's the one I want to slow down for, because it saves homes every single year. It's called the caregiver-child exemption. Let me show you what that looks like with real numbers and a real situation. This is a composite based on common situations described by the Medicaid agency and state programs, not a real person. Picture a widow named Dorothy. Her late husband, Frank, received nursing care paid by Medicaid before he passed. After his death, the state opened an estate recovery claim against the home, the only real asset they had left. But their daughter, Linda, had moved into that house and cared for both of them for more than 2 years. Care that kept Frank out of a nursing home far longer than he otherwise would have been. Because Linda lived in the home and provided that level of care for at least 2 years before Frank entered care, the caregiver-child exemption applied. The home could pass to Linda without a penalty, and it stayed in the family. That exemption is real, and it is documented on the Medicaid planning guidance drawn from federal rules. But it requires proof, which brings us to what you actually do. If what I'm showing you is useful, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. That's what tells YouTube to push this kind of plain English retirement walkthrough to more retirees who need to hear it, instead of leaving them awake at night, afraid of something that usually isn't even true. And if you want the one-page checklist version of this episode, the link in the description has my free Protect Your Home from Estate Recovery worksheet with the exemptions and the questions to ask your state, all on a single page you can print and keep by the phone. Rule 4 is planning. And I have to be careful here, because this is exactly the place where the disclaimer at the top of this video matters most. This is general information, not advice. And the honest truth is that these tools go wrong when people try them alone. Here is the framework. Medicaid uses what is called a look-back period. When you apply for long-term care Medicaid, the state reviews your financial transactions for the 60 months, 5 years, right before your application. If you gave away assets or sold them for less than they were worth during that window, you trigger a penalty period, a stretch of time where you are ineligible even though you would otherwise qualify. That penalty is calculated by taking what you gave away and dividing it by your state's average monthly nursing home cost. In Florida, for 2026, that divisor is $10,645 a month. So, if you gave away roughly $53,000 inside the look-back, that is about a 5-month penalty with no Medicaid to pay the bill. Now, the tools people use, and I am naming them only so you know the words, not so you go do them yourself. Irrevocable trusts, life estates, and what some states call ladybird deeds. Timely transfers of the home to a qualifying person. The caregiver-child transfer we just talked about is actually exempt from the look-back penalty, which is one reason it is so powerful. But a transfer to the wrong person, or at the wrong time inside that 5-year window, does real damage. That is the rule. So the planning lever is real. But it is a lever you pull with an elder law attorney standing next to you, not one you pull off a YouTube video, including this one. Here is your one-page action plan. 1. Find out whether your state's recovery program reaches only long-term care Medicaid or goes further by searching your state's name plus the words Medicaid Estate Recovery and reading the state's own .gov page. 2. Write down who in your family is protected today: a surviving spouse, a child under 21, a blind or disabled child of any age, a caregiver child who lived with you and cared for you, or a sibling with equity in the home. 3. Do not transfer or retitle your house on your own, because the 5-year look-back can turn a well-meant gift into a months-long penalty. Talk to an elder law attorney first. 4. If you have a caregiver child, start keeping proof now: their residence dates and a daily care log, the exact documentation the exemption requires. 5. Ask your state Medicaid office directly about its undue hardship waiver process, since every state must offer one. Same house, same family, same amount Medicaid paid for care. Do nothing and understand nothing, and the state's claim lands on the one asset you had left. Understand these 4 rules, keep the right proof, and get an hour with the right attorney, and that same home passes to your daughter with the claim blocked. That is the difference the 55 and older estate recovery rule makes, and it is entirely in your hands. Next time, I'm walking through a question a lot of you have been asking me in the comments. Seniors, did you miss the new $6,000 tax deduction? And whether you actually qualify for it this year. So here is my question for you. Do you have an adult child living in your home who helps take care of you right now? Yes or no? Tell me in the comments. I read every single comment, and the most common questions become future videos. I will see you in the next.